Finding out about her affair, I departed quietly. She came looking for a second chance and pardon a year later. I headed to the hills after learning of my wife's adultery. Though I'm not sure why I'm writing this, maybe it may be useful to someone after the incident is past, and I've moved on. 3.5 years of marriage later, I found out in February 2018 about my wife's affair. I worked a contract job that periodically required a lot of travel, but it also let me work from home when I got back. My wife held a very profitable job directing a technical sales company. Her working longer and longer hours and me driving for business had somewhat strained things, but we still had what I would consider to be a rather good marriage. Background: 5 years ago, I met my wife, who is now my ex, at a picnic thrown by a mutual friend. We clicked right away upon beginning our conversation. To be honest, I really benefited much from being with a woman so beautiful and eloquent. She saw some attraction in my roughly rounded-the-edges approach. We were in love with one another after a few weeks of dating. The garments flew off when we would get together, at one another's homes. Following 18 months of courting, we finally got married and moved into a spacious apartment while saving for a down payment on a house. 3 years of marriage marked the beginning of changes. She would dispute over trivial things, even though I still felt something for her. She would become agitated when I brought up all the late hours and the progressively frequent work trips. She would say that paying the dues required her to be advancing up the corporate ladder and that this was an essential step. At least that served as her explanation. She told me I had no right to question her as I too spent weeks at a time abroad. Actually, I'd only been on 3 or 4 day trips every 5 weeks or so. I so told her I could surely control reducing my travel time. These rather circular debates never had a resolution. Looking back, I knew I had no idea my wife was having an affair. Apart from our deteriorating sexual life and her always late working hours, I would never have guessed anything. I just figured she was worn out from her work. But my ego had suffered from being turned down so frequently when I wanted to initiate a sexual connection. She might have been using her work cell phone, but I did not see the secret texting described in other stories. She spent a lot of time in our spare bedroom acting as a home office. Kathy started going home from work about September 2017 and staying overnight at a work engagement instead. 1 night a week, then over 3 evenings every week. She would surely be envious even if I'm not naturally jealous. Seen by others, and I know she would have to fend off some of the men working for her. She seemed to be mainly focused on her work even though she worked with more male CEOs than female ones. 1 month before D-Day, I first thought she was cheating. She had stopped at the supermarket briefly before heading back home. I was asked to help her with the groceries. As I was getting a few things from the rear seat, something pink gleamed just under her front passenger seat. My wife owned a bra of the kind. I knew it was hers as she liked those from a specific clothes store. Looking back, I think the bra served as a warning sign. When she feels especially passionate, she always takes off her bra first from under her clothes. I'm not sure why, but right away I felt ill to my stomach upon viewing this. Why her bra was under the seat confused me. I spoke nothing more. When I returned the bags to the kitchen, Kathy asked me how I was feeling and said I seemed to have seen a ghost. My heart must have been hammering so hard that I almost passed out. I just disregarded her comment. It took all I had to hide my feelings, but I tried not to come out as angry or misled. I decided to try to find out whether she saw someone that evening and the following day. I started to think through all the hints I might have missed. Except for the bra, I had no proof. We live in a somewhat large city. She works in an office building downtown. I decided to momentarily ignore the affair concept and think about giving her more of my time. One Friday after work, I set the dining table with exquisite dishes, silverware, and candles and made a great dinner. I bought a great bottle of wine and a floral arrangement. When she arrived as usual, zipping in after work, I showed her the dinner and all I had prepared. She claimed she was sorry, but she had to meet her colleagues at a local hangout. She said she could have a little snack with me before she departed, but she had to first shower. I suppose I went completely mute when my innermost thoughts turned on me. I had enough. I won't go into the kind of rage I was feeling at the moment here. While she was showering, I grabbed my work cell phone and tossed it in her back seat. I had been thinking of using my personal phone to track her. After that, I went into the kitchen and dumped food and flowers in the trash. She got ready and looked amazing as usual after showering. "All right, let us eat," she said. "Still," I advised, "never worry, go out with pals." She looked at me weirdly and asked whether I was furious. I said, "Sad that you never want to do anything with me." She became agitated and rudely pointed out my short fuse, urging me to stop acting. Like a small child. "Stupid me," I said while standing there letting everything calm down. We should spend the evening together, and for once I felt. She just grinned slyly and bolted off. Pulling out my second phone, I started tracking her work phone as she left. I noticed her stopping at the bar she goes frequently with her colleagues 20 minutes or so away. I decided to go track her car. True enough, it was in the bar's parking lot. I waited to see her in my car across the street. I told myself I had to control my anxiety about her location, even though I felt entirely different, like a stalker. About 1 hour after I arrived, I watched her exiting the bar with a male. He looked to be an executive from her company. He grabbed her, dragged her close, and buried a kiss on her lips. My stomach started to contract and my hole was completely numb. They climbed in together from another car. I tried to follow their car as it pulled out. You guessed it. They traveled 10 minutes to a hotel. Stopped on the street next to the hotel, I saw them walk in hand out. Enough was seen. I felt ridiculous. I started fist beating the steering wheel. Such was it. Inside of me, something went absolutely blank. Though I'm not sure if I blacked out or experienced an out-of-body experience, as I recovered, I felt like I needed a drink. By now, my life was on a road I never would have thought possible. I started to drive out of town, playing over all I had just seen. As much as I hate to admit it, I was crying out of rage. About 30 miles from town, on the outskirts, I came onto a nice little bar and stopped. Seated at the bar, I ordered a drink. I suppose I looked like death warmed over as the bartender, a woman, stated I looked like someone had taken the wind out of my sails. Half smiling, I responded, "You might say that." Though I felt like not talking, a man sat down next to me started a conversation. This man had something about that which calmed me down. We were talking, and finally my wife's adultery surfaced. All I wanted to do, I told her, was distance from her and forget about her. "You're not alone, friend," he answered, giving me a brief glance and a back pat. A few years ago, I went through it. I believe there is a reason these events take place. Your life can flip either positively or negatively right now. I promise you, right now everything is completely under your control. His comments startled me for some reason out of darkness. I knew I was in pain, but I have always been able to see things logically. He was quite right. We knew each other. Ray was his name. Though he was more of a country guy, I truly loved his salt-of-the-earth attitude. "You intend to move out?" he asked. I guess I never gave that far forward thinking much thought. I knew I wanted to be away from this woman anymore, and I felt a fight-or-flight reaction. "I have an idea, and I find great resonance in your predicament," Ray said. "I have a mobile trailer on my farm should you feel the need to travel when the time comes. It's not very good, and would call some effort. Why don't you come see if you could picture yourself momentarily living in anything like that? On it, I will present you a fantastic deal. At least you could even park it on some beautiful land I own. If you could view it for me, it would be much appreciated. Just a suggestion. It could help you to get out of your situation." I stopped to let his idea sink in. Hell, honey, if I could have run away my crazy ex-husband years ago, I would have leaped at the chance to go live in his trailer or whatever just to get my mind on straight, added the bartender, who had been listening in on the talk. Maybe this was exactly what I needed, but I felt like I had stumbled into the Twilight Zone. Indeed, I will consider it and perhaps visit it, I told Ray after a time. We arranged to get together at his house in a few days and divide it up. I started to feel as though I had some perspective and a chance to go away from what I considered to be a dreadful heartache mixed with a nightmare. One thing was clear. I would never ever wish to spend time with my wife once more. Cheating is absolutely repulsive, and it has always been the one thing I would never have tolerated. That evening when I got home, I settled on the couch, following Kathy's inquiry of my whereabouts upon her release. "Where have you been lately?" Turning to face her, I asked. She said, "You know I went to get drinks." I said straightforwardly, "Are you having an affair?" She seemed shocked, but she quickly straightened herself and answered, "No. Why would you ask me that?" I told her I had heard she could be seeing someone at work. She said, "Who told you that?" I said, "Someone I know," but I kept the name under wraps. Saying you're being foolish, she accused me of being drunk and crazy and asked where I was. I said, "We're heading to a bar to have some drinks with buddies." She came back to our bedroom and went to bed, although clearly wanting more inquiries. I decided to sleep on the sofa now I had evidence she had been misleading me for months. Seeing her in bed with this guy kept me from sleeping entirely. I felt disgusted and hurt, sorry for myself. But then I considered Ray's trailer. The idea of it made me happy, and almost like a flash insight. Something has to be wrong with me since the fight or flight reaction started automatically among the suffering I was going through. And I wanted the flight reaction. The next morning we hardly spoke, and we carried on the weekend as though nothing had happened. Few days later, I set up a meeting with Ray. When I arrived, Ray had a beautiful ranch, and the trailer, about 26 feet long and completely furnished, was actually rather pleasant. It reminded me of a great spring break vacation I went on with friends during my undergraduate years. Ray took the money I provided for the trailer. To be really honest, I nearly grabbed it from him. Following his directions, I drove over to view his ranch land. Nearby were bike and hiking trails. The region was beautiful, with lots of trees and scrub plants. Ray had a small cabin on a hilltop with water and power for the trailer and near proximity to some mountain foothills. Ray agreed to drag the trailer to the site and set it up for me. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked to convince Kathy to come clean. All I got was gaslighting. I even told her straightforwardly that should I find she was cheating, there would be no turning back. She started to laze out denials at me and grew even more lost in her affair fog. The degree of the denial was almost funny. I chastised myself for not photographing the two of them, and I had no physical proof she had cheated. Having experienced this mental turmoil, I came to feel that I wanted to divorce this marriage. Rather of telling Kathy how I felt, I started to strategize. I started subtly taking my stuff from the apartment and putting it on the trailer while she was at work. At least, I felt as though I was acting toward a solution. Kathy showed changes throughout this time. She had been acting more civilly toward me, but I felt it was too little, too late. She continued on corporate trips as I thought I needed a break as well. One evening after work, I got ready too, just as she was leaving. She glanced at me and asked about my destination. All I said was, getting together with some buddies. You neither know them nor would like all the shop chat. She started to probe more, and I interrupted her. She used to say exactly this to me every time I inquired whether I may go on workplace outings. All fine, have a great time, she said, looking little insulted. I will most sure, I said. Working on the trailer and hanging out with Ray at the pub, I started striking new friendships. Spending time with Ray's great family and friends made me feel better. I decided to cut back on my drinking as well since I wanted no bad habits developed. Though it would have been so easy, I knew better than to sink myself in pity. By now, Kathy told me she would be flying for business the next week. When I asked who was going, she said the executive team and a few department heads were leaving. I said, looking at her, hoping your time with your lover is fantastic. Saying it immediately made me regret it since it set off a heated debate. As Ray had told me, though, It was not really important. I now wish I knew more about AP, her affair partner. It makes no difference who the other man is, Ray said. What counts is her decision to walk away from you. Whether she told brother or not, she wrecked the marriage. Facts are realities. Ray should compile a book for the betrayed. Damn it, I had the perfect chance to move out totally for Kathy's work trip. I gathered everything valuable that belonged to me when she was gone. Clothing, computers, tools, etc. I skipped furnishings and shared items. Before I went, I noted, though first it was a long explanation, I decided to keep it short. On a piece of paper I scribbled, hoping it was worth it. Apart from the reminder regarding the kitchen table, I set my wedding ring. As I walked away, I felt as though a big weight had been taken off. I was released. Although there would be baggage to deal with, and the hurt would take time to heal, I had started. I needed time for myself, as well as quick and discreet means of disposal for her. I felt ashamed since I hadn't confronted her or forced a confession. I hadn't shouted or screamed. I thought she deserved nothing. She ignored whatever we owned, including our future plans, our dreams for a house and a family, and suddenly it was all gone. There was no reversal. I owed her nothing at all. She could deal with the fallout. I hadn't scheduled anything or contacted a lawyer. I basically needed some clarity and a fresh start. Once inside my trailer, the mountain air was exactly what I needed. The next week I started running again, and it was fantastic to be alive. While she was abroad, Kathy texted things like, "We just landed, we're having a team dinner," and so on. "You live where?" asked in a couple email. "Why haven't you returned my call?" I silence. When she arrived home, my phone burst in texts and calls. She persisted in attempting to reach out to me, but I brushed her off. Her mother tried to phone me following the first day as well, but I missed her call. Since my father is the only member of my family I still have, and we are not close, she did not try to involve him. Her messages became more pressing after she went a week without attention. What is this? Among the books she supplied was one. We have to communicate. Not sure what you know, but nothing is occurring. No affair is underway here. After not responding for a week, she suddenly texted me apologizing. "I'm sorry things got out of hand. It made no difference whether I engaged someone else at work. You missed a lot of meetings while I was buried in my work. I only made a mistake. I wanted to stop it." Mistook? Though I had been waiting for this confession all along, it simply made me hate her more. Why couldn't she tell the truth? Dreams of a future with this woman did not abound for me. Mistakes do not linger 6, 8, or a year. Her calls for me to come back and finish the marriage finally turned sad. Even after she ceased nagging me a few weeks ago, I avoided answering her. She shouldn't be learning where I live or prowling around my life. This woman would demolish my haven, and I wanted none of that. She started then sending abusive texts like, "You're a coward. You started to avoid me one day. You don't really care about us. Come home, please, so we may talk. You're where? I could make it to see Paul. Kindly let us talk and correct things." Shame it. Though I cannot remember all the books, they all seem to be justifications with no real regret. I let them go in one ear and out from the other. I changed my mobile number eventually. Update June 2018. Kathy emailed me saying she had engaged a lawyer and intended to file for divorce. I said, okay, that sounds great. Emails asking that I visit her and other things started flooding in response. She said she would cease pestering me should I agree to an uncontested divorce. A few months later, I felt really free after understanding this wouldn't work once I agreed. I never seen her once I moved out of our flat. Though none of us found closure, she seemed to be more concerned about that than I was. I would periodically think of her for a few months. Indeed, the loss would strike me unexpectedly, much like when I heard a song we used to appreciate. Still, after some time, I just stopped considering her. Update number 2. Officially divorced now, things are going nicely. Actually, I came to know a really amazing girl right down from my house's hill. On the track, I was sprinting. When I helped her change a flat tire, we clicked. She is wonderful and really cute, even if she is a few years my junior. She calls me her mountain man and loves my way of life. I'm not in a hurry to commit, but I also want to not give up on women totally. I have no plans to soon move out of the trailer. I like being outside and have streamlined my life. It simplified everything, including my pain and my ex-wife. I know that everyone reacts to these kinds of events differently. I had the good fortune, not yet a father, and in my 3rd year of marriage. I think I behaved in my own best interests. You are not obliged to spend your whole life with a cheater. If you go through something similar, try not to obsess too much. Live your life while developing personally. It will improve. I want everyone lives the best they may possibly have. I wanted to let you know about the situation of my ex-wife. I had changed this around 5 times to make it readable. As I mentioned in my previous piece, I worried about my ex-wife looking for me. I left our old house, which was 2 hours away. She last weekend was running in a coffee shop I usually attend in the town near my house. To me, it seemed hardly coincidental. Luckily, I left before she saw me. 3rd review. This past weekend I went into town to pick groceries and stopped at my regular coffee shop. I was working on some business documents on their free internet. I came out of the coffee shop done. I heard someone yell Paul as I was headed to my pickup. I turned to check across the street and spotted Kathy. My ex-wife was waving me in front of. At last, Armageddon arrived. I stood there incredulous as she rushed across the street toward me. She moved across and reached out her hand as though expecting an embrace. Immediately holding out my arms with my palms up, I stopped her in her tracks. She looked to be in great suffering. Then she said, "Paul, I have been looking for you. Having heard you relocated here, I have wanted to see you. Are we able to talk?" Guys, I felt like a cage-bound animal. Indeed, I did. "All right, let's hunt for a table or anything. We can chat for a minute." When she requested if we can visit my place, I at last yielded. I turned down strongly. She followed me down to a bench outside a little business at the end of the block. She started by noting how much I had changed and how much she appreciated my new haircut, beard, and degree of fitness. She enthused about the changes in my body. She was really putting on the charm, sporting a tank top, little white shorts, and ponytail hairstyle like I used to love. I was tuned with great awareness. She was obviously trying to get the sex appeal on motion. I had to learn self-control if I was to find out where this was going. She started with apologies for the affair. She said that after I left, karma had badly affected her. The encounter caused such stress that her company finally asked her to leave. At the time engaged, her affair partner AP was criticized and moved to another division of the company. She responded by telling his fiancée the truth, following his blame of her for everything, which led to their breakup. She lowered her head at this to start crying. I remained silent. I simply sat there, observing. She straightened herself and stared at me for a moment. "From me? What is your desired?" I sought. She gave me her word that she intended no affair. She said her AP used his charm and authority to corrupt her, and that the company's politics and positioning pulled her in. After I accused her of cheating, she admitted she felt she was using him as much as he was using her. She said she meant to be clean. She hated herself, hence she drank after work to relieve the guilt she was experiencing right now. She said she felt so alone, so dumb, as though her heart had exploded with loss right away upon my leaving. She broke off her relationship with her AP straight away. I refused to talk with her or get in touch with her, thus she thought she had to find me to see if there was any hope of reconciliation. She wanted a clean start. Though she knew we were divorced, she believed we may begin anew. I turned only to stare at her. I handed it to her then. "Coming out here and undoing all the damage you have done is not your right. Do you believe I will ignore all you did to split our marriage?" As I said already, we were done if you cheated. One does not exist in forgiveness. There won't be a comeback of this link. You killed it. You destroyed everything we had as soon as you walked away. How stupid do you find me to be? One evening I spotted you and him walking into a hotel. Do you know that? People starting to realize that my voice had been getting louder dawn on me. She seized my arm and began to cry. I moved her away after letting her gutter on my shoulder for some while. I deserve all this, she said, looking up at me. I am sure I do. Would you let me take you out to supper if nothing else? I would prefer not go. I'd want to talk more. We should be open about everything, hence I want to make sure. Paul, you have to spend more time with me than you have in past years. Please. I love you so very greatly. Though I know you might not want to hear it, I had no idea how much I loved you before you left me. You broke me exactly as I broke you. I cannot forgive myself. Till the day I die, I do not want to do so. She started to hyperventilate and furiously cry. I hauled her up and hugged her. My only chance for calming her seemed to be this. I understood then that I had broken her heart as badly as she had broken mine. Walking, we came upon a quiet area perfect for our discussion. How did you find me when she had cooled off? You hired a private investigator? She gave it some thinking and answered no with a little laugh. She explained that she ran into Stacy a few weeks earlier and asked how things were doing. Stacy said nothing about noticing me. Kathy pushed her to divulge all the facts. Stacy was reluctant since I had cautioned her not to tell her. Kathy insisted, though. At last, Stacy yielded, but all she knew was that I lived nearby and visited on her days off. She started showing up here to see me. Thinking, dang, Stacy can't keep her trap closed. I kind of laughed. She red flushed. We finally agreed to have dinner at a modest but lovely restaurant with a patio. I made sure we refrained from drinking anything, as I wanted no justification for her to treat me kindly or claim she wasn't so drunk. She could not turn around. We actually had a decent chat. Then I walked her to her car. She stated that she had not dated anyone else since I left and swore fiercely that I was the only one she wanted. She therefore gave me strong encouragement to stay longer. I told her, it's still far too early for me to travel that route. She begged me to come back, but I turned down. I said nothing more after handing her my new email address. When she asked for my phone number, I said, you'll simply blow it out with texts and calls. She cried over it, although ultimately she agreed with my decision. Before she left, she promised to email me details about getting back into town the next weekend. Before she got into her car, I asked her straight, would you have forgiven me if I had been the one cheating? Certainly with time, but only if we visited a marriage counselor and worked through the healing process with lots of talking, perhaps even with a legally enforceable agreement. She answered after stopping to gather herself. All right, possibly in 5 or 10 years I could achieve that. If that were what it would take, she answered, I would wait. She then took both of my hands in hers, looked me in the eye and said, God damn it, Paul. I will always love you and will do anything to prove it. This actually caught me off surprise. Her comments still unsettled me long after she left. She had uttered those words with such conviction. I still could nevertheless see us getting back together, even if the encounter made me feel better. At this point, I could not see her as a friend, perhaps just friend. Still, that was a puzzle. After returning home, had a long run, had some beer, and considered my progress. Would someone kindly reassure me she wouldn't disrupt the peace I had made for myself? I knew nothing. Though it was all still too fresh in my mind, I had the luxury of time to comb through it and find perspective. Most probably, this will be my last update. The censors kept deleting my tale when I originally posted it on Reddit. Before she found me, I ghosted my ex-wife for almost a year overall. She wanted to atone and start over with us. If you assumed I would be the usual beta blue pill fool and forgive her, you will be quite let down. She sent me a long email last week, expressing her love and guilt over the affair. She volunteered to come visit once more over the weekend. I responded. I stifled her. I told her I had no intentions to atone with her. Living alone, using my remote location, and keeping things simple make me quite happy. At 32, I'm not rushed to change anything. I like the company of a few women and friends and have my own self-determination schedule. I refused to give her my phone number and made it plain in my email reply that I had no intention of reconciling. You created your bed, hence I neither know nor trust you anymore. Though not right now, I hope the best of things for you and maybe we may become friends in the future. Her annoyance at my evasiveness led to a telling response. She said she had accepted a job offer from another state. Her actual intention had been for me to go with her since she thought my remote work would make the relocation easy. She yearned we could begin over some fresh ground. Running out of time before she moved, she wanted to personally try to persuade me. Fortunately for me, I had a week of business travel booked, and her time ran out. I am glad I will not have her in my life anymore. She will soon see her time with me is running out, but I expect a few more emails. She will have to choose someone else and might even cheat on him. To anyone reading this, maximize your life, let the past go, and equip yourself the will to move forward. Good luck to all of you. Thank you for watching. If you have not yet subscribed, kindly do so and push the notification bell to keep informed with more startling real-life events occurring right around you.